Welcome to the DADnB Show, episode 7. I am Zoo22. I am here with Good Shepherd, Ken K. And today our sponsor is My Mixdown.
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
Yes. So first up, where are you, Kevin?
We're at the mother-in-law's house in Colorado.
How's your Aspen?
Nice and clean.
I got a dad joke in there. It's been a while now, and we've been at it, and we've actually gotten some shout-outs. I was recently listening to Seller on the Seller Selection podcast with Echomatics, who will be our guest today. Seller was talking with Echomatics about the show, and Seller feeling like we were a bit of an inspiration to, as a dad, get back into drum and bass and do his thing. So definitely check out everything he's got to offer on his social media and podcasts and all of that. He does little features on his Instagram with really good selection. Yes, we just passed the 4th of July, and that is why I have these child instruments behind me. I have revived my 4th of July parade from back in the day, this time with kids, and we were just wailing away at drums out in the street.
Parade number 2.
It was awesome. I have dreamed about sharing music with kids and kind of giving them some of that spark of excitement that I get from playing the drums, from drum and bass, from all of this. Obviously, I hope my son Lane, I made him his custom little drum back here, little marching drum. We both have the kazoo and the drum on, and that was super neat. So yeah, my other big news is, the big journey and why we started this was to get our music released. And the first step for me was getting a release on Full Send DNB North America. And that came out on July 1st, the Chase Down EP. Also a track on the Ukraine Benefit album, which I'm stoked about. I'm off work, so I've got a couple of tracks I'm cooking up. I'm trying to get ready to send back before I do go back to work, and maybe a couple more. And if Ken K over here works on our collab, I think it would be a good one to send with 2 of the ones that I'm working on, possibly to Default, who Johnny knows a thing or two about.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know you've got some stuff going on with them still. Maybe it seems like the list is growing, right?
Yeah. So, I did that remix. I think I talked about this before, of Euphonics' Another Day. And then they picked up a collaboration that Tom and I did, Euphonics, called Live So Freely. And they want us to do a collaboration EP for them. So that's pretty exciting. And then kind of, I wouldn't say hush hush, but they picked up 2 more of my tracks also. So I think we might be talking about doing another EP. So really got a good relationship going with Default. Our good friend, Josh Siren, does the mastering for them. And the 2 guys that run the label are just really great to work with, Ian and Adam. And then I have this 4-track EP that's going to come out on Smooth and Groove. They have the pre-masters. I'm waiting on a release date patiently. So hopefully some news there. And then the 3rd label is kind of, maybe it's a little top secret, but I don't think they'd mind just mentioning it. Kevin and I did Take a Chance, and his wife, Alyssa, is on the vocals too. So it's a family affair. But I've been talking to Sunny Moves for about a year and sent it over to them. Jack came back and he was like, hey, what are your plans with this song? And I said, I don't know. I was hoping you might want to pick it up because it fits your sound, not your label. So he wants it. And he's asked Kevin and I to do another collab that we'll probably get started on maybe at the end of the summer, early fall. But that's probably going to come out either later this year or early next year. So yeah, Zach, to your point, like it's all happening. That's why, we wanted people to see this journey that we're on. And, we felt like if we stuck with it and grinded enough, that things would happen, and they are.
Yeah, I think John is definitely our point person when it comes to getting our sound and our whatever, just getting out into the public, and that is such a vital part. It's not just the hours and hours and hours spent in the DAW making the music, but it's that part too that takes time. And not even just time out there doing it, but just time. Time has to pass. You have to me, it seems like the fact that, time is passing, we haven't gone away. We're still on the Discords. We're still doing this. We're still doing Twitch stuff. We're still posting to Instagram. We're still liking other people's stories. We're still reposting our friends' music and stuff that we like. Like, that presence does take time. You can't, just say we couldn't come out, even if we had been working on music for 2 years before we decided to come out, and then just like started spamming people. I don't think that really works, and I think that's one thing that Winslow has talked about. All right.
Yeah.
We have someone joining us right about now. Echomatics.
It's like another day in the office.
Hello.
Hello. 1 2 1 2.
How's it going? Do I sound okay?
Yes.
That's great.
Did they say hello in Canada?
Do they say hello?
Oh, take off, eh?
How do y'all say hello?
What's that all about?
Hello.
Well, I was on a surf trip once, and we were staying with some Canadians and a girl from the South in America, in the USA, not South America, and she said at one point, "So is Canada like a democracy?" I was like, "Oh, what? They have a king?" I mean, it's like, you know what Canada is, right?
A form of democracy. I think it's what is it? It's funny. My son was just taking this in school, and it kind of surprised me because it is a democracy, but what's the type? I got to look it up now.
Yeah, America's got some. I mean, the United States got some sort of
We're a republic.
Constitutional republic, I think.
We're a republic of states.
That's it. We're a constitutional monarchy.
Oh,
because of the roots to the British.
Well, that maybe she was right. Like, maybe I'm the one who's stupid. Probably.
And why did she have to throw in the Southern accent? Like, that means you're
that was her accent.
That's just where she was from.
I feel like you really hammed it up a little extra though. But
she had that one.
What's that all about? No.
About she wasn't like, well, I declare. Not that kind.
Like Gone with the Wind?
Yeah.
I find anytime I'm talking to somebody from down south, like within a matter of 30 seconds, I start picking up and talking slightly with just a little bit more of a drawl. It just kind of happens automatically.
Well, y'all, I'll never give that up. I moved to California, almost 18 years ago, and I'll never give it up because it's practical.
Well, in today's world too, now you guys is offensive, so you all is
plural.
Gender neutral.
Gender neutral. There you go. Y'all. And it's the Vosotros, which we don't have. It's y'all's is a double contraction, which is even more practical.
Y'all's.
Brevity. So yeah, I'm Zach. I don't know that we formally met.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I've met you only because I've watched like all of the previous videos. So yeah, it's a little surreal kind of being here. And
yeah, I'm glad we could have you on the show. I know you and John have been working together, and as we discussed, we kind of know some things about you, but for our millions of viewers out there that may not know you, tell us about your style and your music a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Glad to. I'm known as Echomatics for my artist name. I've actually been making music for a really, really long time, but just for shits and giggles, just for myself. And my wife was kind of the individual who just kept on poking me and being like, hey, go do something with this. Like, take it from a hobby you do in the bedroom and, you know, make something of it. I think you have something here. And eventually I succumbed to her pressure, like we all do in various ways. And thankfully I did. You know, I kind of started, like probably most of us, doing SoundCloud, just putting some stuff out there that I thought was interesting, and slowly but surely kind of build up some confidence and put more out there. And, you know, there's the whole story there. But I'd say a lot of my influence coming up prior to making drum and bass was hip hop, probably like a lot of us, you know, growing up in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s. That was what I was primarily making a lot of in my early 20s. From kind of the electronic end of things, it was, you know, a lot of house, a lot of techno, and occasionally some drum and bass would sneak in through friends who had either visited the UK or had somebody in their family visit the UK and come back with a cassette tape with a bunch of stuff recorded off the radio. And just remember hearing it, and just like, it breaks too, right? And just hearing stuff and just being like, holy crap, like this is so different. Like, and really resonated, I think, with a lot of the hip hop influence growing up. So yeah,
did you ever, like, were you listening to electronic music at all? Like, for me, I was kind of like, I grew up playing the drums, and I listened to rock as a kid, you know. It was like, started with Duran Duran, went to Poison, then Whitesnake, then Pantera, just kind of got heavier.
Started with Duran Duran? Nice.
And well, my sister and I parted ways at like pretty much Duran Duran was where we parted ways. She went Erasure, I went Poison, and she called it.
Like 80s British pop music was just fantastic, right?
Agreed.
But I mean, I'm not even gonna act like I know about that. Like,
Pet Shop Boys.
I was not listening to The Cure. I was like,
yeah, me neither. I was like Run DMC, Beastie Boys,
near music, and then I don't know if it was John. Somebody gave me Raising Hell, and then Tribe Called Quest came out.
Oh yeah,
Native Tongues, that kind of stuff, and I was like, and then I started listening to blues and jazz, and all of that kind of coalesced. Which is at the same time, the '90s was, you know, Pearl Jam and all of that kind of music. But for me, it was just like, you know, I was one of those people that thought all electronic music was called techno, and boots. I listened to near music, and boots was like right out. So, but I started listening to Pink Floyd. I started to understand analog versus digital. And so I was like, okay, well, since it's analog synthesizers, I can listen to it. And I saw Modulations, a movie, and, you know, whatever. But what I think appealed to me right away was the heaviness, like the heavy music I listened to, and the breaks. I always loved breaks, and so I was never really into house. And now I can appreciate it, and I like house okay, and I like techno. But I always wondered, like, did you listen to acid house? Like, was you kind of like hearing everything that was coming from Europe?
Yeah, no, I mean, man, I was lucky. Like I have like, goes back many years in my family being musicians, right? So like my grandmother played the piano, my father's a drummer, and my mom loves music. So like my earliest memories are just, you know, her taking me to concerts. And just music influence. My mom's quite young too. She had me as a teenager, so I kind of grew up through her young adulthood as well. So I have, you know, I was born in '79. I'm 42, but I can, you know, I know the '80s like I was a young teenager, right? Even though I was a young child, because I just kind of got that influence through her. I'd say like my influences originally out of the gate was like punk, you know, so like some of the cliche stuff like Pennywise and NoFX, to some of the more kind of obscure kind of punk influences, and hip hop, like anything that was like disgruntled young adults and teenagers expressing their emotions and feelings was something I connected to. But at the same time had a strong 80s presence through my mom. And not until being much older did I realize a lot of that was essentially electronic music, like analog electronic, right? Like that's essentially, they were using drum machines and synthesizers and really kind of pushing the limits at the time, but a bit more, I guess, mainstream. So I had and my grandmother's classically trained. So I grew in, my family's Hungarian, I immigrated from Budapest. So a lot of like traditional European classical music. So I honestly got hit with everything, like an incredible list of music. Mm-hmm. And I like to this day, and hopefully my children, the same thing. We obviously listen to a crap ton of drum and bass for obvious reasons, but there's still a wide range of other types of music that influence and pull the heartstring or invoke emotions from the past and things of that nature. So yeah, like honestly, I was one of these people, and my wife's the same way. Like loves music. She's a dancer. So she connects to music in her own way. And the two of us could probably just live the rest of our life, like just listening to music. Like,
that's awesome. She likes drum and bass.
She loves drum and bass. Like,
man, I can't. The more bullshit I go through in my life, the more I realize how much I married the right person. Like, I love my wife, and even our arguments are like growth, and we're very close. And she understands me, but she don't like drum and bass.
He draws a line there.
Where's your wife at, Johnny?
Right now?
Drum and bass. Does she like it, or where's she at on drum and bass?
Tolerates it. She tolerates it. I mean, like, she'll come in and listen to some songs, but I don't have a wife that will actually put down vocals on a track. So I don't know, Eric, if you've heard it before, but Kevin and I have a track that Alyssa, his wife, did. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. How about you, Kevin? How's Alyssa with?
I'm not. I think she doesn't obviously like the super heavy stuff, but she does like some of it for sure. And she has a background in singing, so she always wants to get involved. But we made one trip hop song, and I don't know. Like many producers, my problem was always finishing songs. So I still have this like one sort of Thievery Corporation-esque song from like a decade ago that we made. Now that these guys have really, gotten my ass in gear to finish songs, this track that we had seemed like a good fit for her. And she studied opera for many years and has perfect pitch. And so it's a nice benefit.
Yeah, that would be, even just getting little snippets and things like that too.
Here and there for sure.
You can just like get something that's at the right pitch and modulates in the way that goes with your song, and then put it in, just process it and make it sound.
Yeah. So I definitely want to start using her more, and maybe it'll be like part of, my sound. Maybe we'll see, but I also like variety. So
I like that idea, Kevin. I think she did an excellent job. One thing that we did talk about, Zach, was Eric. I want to plug you a little bit. So part of the reason we want to have guests on the show is we want to learn more about them and get inside your head, but we also want it to be a way in which we could promote you a bit. So I know you have really just turned on the switch like in the last 18 months, because you and I were talking a bit on Discord in the past.
Yeah.
I know we connected over Twitch. I think we might even have connected on Mike Kiss's feedback sessions. And then
yeah, exactly.
You started giving me a lot of feedback on my songs, which I still appreciate. And then all of a sudden it was like, you came out on C Recordings, and then you did this track with Alpha Rhythm, the Ganymede track. And then you had your own EP. And now you've got Looking Up coming out on Celsius, right? Yeah. Is that July 17th?
Yeah. Looking Up is out now. About a few weeks ago.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. I have a return EP with C Recordings coming out July 17th. So that'll be a year later.
Yeah.
And then I have a third EP with Celsius coming out in October.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really impressive.
How many kids?
Yeah. Go ahead.
How many kids do you have?
I have two
Nice.
children. Yeah, I have a 11-year-old and a 7-year-old, and
It's
obviously
impressive.
full-time job. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's sorry, I don't know if there was a follow-up there.
No, go for it.
Yeah, no, I thank you. I appreciate that. Like it's like all of you just trying to hustle and figure myself out and navigate the complexity of this world. And thankfully, from what I've discovered over the last couple of years, for the most part, people in this community are just amazing, right? Like everybody is so open. Like I say this all the time. When I first started making music in my early 20s, there was like nobody to go to. There wasn't Discord, YouTube videos, and like you just learned through trial and error, and sometimes
Or not at all.
and you burned out and you just put it away and didn't come back to it. So like I had moments through the years coming across individuals that I jived with who were at similar places, but now it's like a whole other level, right? It's like it blows my mind. But anyways, yeah, man, it's been a hustle. It's been a hustle.
Well, yeah, you don't have to go out to the club to meet him because it's so loud and it hurts my ears.
So late.
Get up early.
That's a follow-up I do have. So really, it's just kind of two related questions. So one, to Zach's point that he brought up is, Eric is in like every stream I find myself in. He's on Twitch, and Twitch is doing something amazing for the drum and bass community. I think Discord has too.
Yeah.
And I feel as if it's a bit of a renaissance in terms of a revival of what's happening with drum and bass. Because I got in drum and bass in like 95.
Oh, wow.
And it was buzzing then. And I feel around like 98, 99 was a good time too. But right now, everybody I talk to that's in the scene is talking about that these might be our better days in drum and bass right now. And I was just wondering what your opinion is on that. Do you really feel like we've hit our peak, or are we going to continue on this trajectory? Or do you have any thoughts around where the health of the drum and bass community is today?
Yeah, like I think, COVID obviously affected everybody, in so many different ways, some more tragic than others. Mm-hmm. But I think it also kind of changed a lot of things, right? Like, obviously. But in drum and bass, I think it had an effect as well too, right? Because all of a sudden people kind of had a bit more time. I think a lot of people like always wanting to do something, found themselves with a bit more flexibility or trapped at home going, what am I going to do with my time?
Yeah.
And I just found like over the last 2 years, there's so many people that were just kind of messing around, kind of took it serious and started producing, myself included, and probably all of you here too, to some extent.
Yeah.
And then you had this whole, the only way you could connect with a lot of the DJs was by going out to the clubs, to the nights they were doing their thing. And if you weren't able to do that, myself, right, on an ongoing basis, it was really hard to connect with a lot of the people that were curating and basically promoting some of the talent. So also you had this massive shift of new talent, and you had all of these DJs coming online who were just itching to continue to do what they do, either to make money or just to keep doing something they love. It was actually, again, my wife who was just like, hey, like, there's this thing called Twitch. And I was like, oh yeah, I know Twitch, like for video games, right? Like, isn't that where people, and she's like, yeah, but like DJ Marky's on here. And like, I was like, what? Yeah. Like, all of a sudden there was like this, like in the beginning of COVID, this 3-month period where I was like watching like Shy FX and like just all of these like amazing DJs who I would kill to see. And I'm like in their living room chatting with them, watching them spin just whatever. And my mind was just like, what? This is crazy. And then like you start, oh, you're a producer, you're another DJ, you're whatever. So that was like this explosion of just new talent coming in that also knew there was some room, I guess, like a bit of room was made. Yeah. And it, also the ability to connect with a lot of the people who help drive and promote and push a lot of that energy and music out there to a wider audience. So that was like, for me, like a really interesting moment and obviously quite unique. And it seems to have continued,
Yeah, I don't think it's going to go away.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
It's like people liked it too much. It's
I
cool.
hope
How good were your tracks, and were you even making drum and bass seriously prior to COVID?
So I was like messing, I got to a point where I was comfortable enough to put it on SoundCloud and just be like, here it is. And like whoever came across it came across it. And that was about it. And then I somehow like connected with Winslow. Like, I don't even know how, to be honest. Like, I've tried racking my brain, like what was the connection? And this is like way before Hospital. This is Winslow, like, when Winslow did Winslow and Friends. I remember it was, I pinged him and it was like, oh man, your Winslow and Friends EP you put out is like amazing.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? It was even before that. I missed the cut. That's what happened. We were chatting. He's like, oh, everything's done. It's mastered. It's going out, but next time. And obviously now there's no next time. That's kind of when we started to connect. And I was making like okay music. Like at the time, it was like way above anything I ever made. Right. I finally kind of wrapped my head around structure, how a song should be structured. A lot of the music I made previously was influenced through a lot of the old timers I had around me who basically had a bunch of analog equipment. They would throw parties and they would do like 3-4 hour long sets where like people would be linked up on different synth systems, just doing like long, like crazy, almost like art jam sessions. So like I would sit there in a DAW and I would make like 20 minute long songs. Right. Like with like no breakdowns. Like it was just like this like vomit of what was in my head. So there was, surprisingly, it took me a while to like understand structure for drum and bass and what was expected. But also try to keep some of the uniqueness involved there. Mm-hmm. So I really wasn't. And then what I ended up doing, and I know I talked to you about this a couple times, but I just kind of went out on Instagram all of a sudden. I said, I'm going to drop a track every month for this year, regardless of how good it is. Mm-hmm. I'm going to push myself every month to do one track. I'm going to self-release it. I'm going to promote it. And I ended up doing like 20 tracks.
That's a great idea.
In 1 year. And the only reason it was 20 is because I did 2 self-released EPs. And was it good? Yeah, some of them were okay. Some of them I go back to. I'm like, holy shit, like this was decent. Like, would I improve the drums? Would I have mastered it differently? Yeah, obviously. But like, I can still sit there and jam to it. And that year was the year prior to C Recordings, right? That was the year where it was just me pushing myself out of my comfort zone, forcing myself to complete tracks. And
this is during COVID.
Yeah, like right at the beginning of it, just like
2020.
Yeah. And then what came of that was actually the networking, right? That's when all of a sudden other artists reached out to me and DJs and, like all of a sudden Mr. Burnt Yogurt, who I've never even heard of before, drops one of my
big
songs.
Supporter. He's a big supporter of you.
Yeah. On YouTube, like 2 years ago, I'm like, what's this? Mr. Burnt, like 8,000 followers? Oh my God, and I'm like, my song is like on this list of all these artists. I'm like, what? I'm on there with like Colossus and Digital Native, and I'm just like, my mind's blown, right? And that year was really big for me, for a lot of reasons, like because it forced me to learn a lot. It forced me to put myself in an uncomfortable situation every month trying to self-release something.
Yeah.
And then I just broadcast it. I didn't hide it. I just called the elephant out. I said, hey, I'm learning and you're all here for the adventure. And enjoy the journey.
Yeah, no, I think that, and as you know, that's part of our tagline is like, John and I, when we first talked about doing this, we were like, John would be like, yeah, we can use this to, showcase our music and do this and do that. And I'm like, well, first of all, like I suck. So I'm not going to act like I can tell anybody anything. But I think what we're doing is interesting enough that somebody might want to see us fall on our face or at least not feel so bad about their music, in comparison. But, and I think that's it too. It's like, on the last Think Breaks feedback session when I put my track up and everybody was like, whoa, like this is really coming along. I wasn't like, well, everything before was crap. No, well, it was. I mean, it wasn't crap, but I mean, like, I kind of knew that. Mm-hmm. I kind of knew that there was improvement, but what am I doing here? Like, and I think this is part of your point, am I making this for me? Because I can do that. Or do I want people to hear it? Do I want DJs to play it? Like, and if you want to do that, you know, if I want to do that, I got to put it out there. And so it actually felt really good to like have them see that journey. And
it's fun. It's I've had a couple of people ask me, they're like, why do you still have your music out from like 3 years ago? Like, you should probably take that down. Like, it doesn't do well for,
doesn't represent you well.
Yeah. And I was like, you know, I remember who was it? It was Resilient, right? Amazing. Like last couple of years stuff. I actually one day, I don't know why, I just like snooped his Instagram. And I scrolled all the way back to the beginning, and he had the stuff right when he was starting still on there. And I remember playing some of his earlier tracks. It was just like anything we created, right? And it was actually really inspirational and honest to see that. Like, such a good artist, like going, no, you know, this is my journey. Like, I wasn't making crazy top tier drum and bass day one, you know, like I had to work my way there. And yeah, it was just really refreshing, I think, just to kind of see someone like that not hide it, pretend they didn't have this idea.
I think that a lot.
And maybe that's a function of like what we talked about before, of things being different. Things are different now. Like,
yeah,
you know, the community is different. The community is more respectful in a way. And yeah, I mean, one other thing, and this is a little bit side, it's not right in the stream of what we're talking about, is that like, you know, what we're talking about is basically Gen X with the four of us.
Totally.
It's like, I had a thought, you know, that it's like when we came into COVID, that like Twitch, Discord is like the drum and bass arena and the Dogs on Acid, and maybe AIM, you know, Messenger, from when John and I first started. And I remember, you know, it was like, you know, 99, 2000, 2001, and those few years when our DJ crew was really popping, and I was really just in it, just buying online, buying records with the little money I had and all that stuff. Same thing where I was like, it blew my mind one day. I was watching Drum and Bass Arena. I think I was at the 222 apartment with John, and we were chatting like back and forth for like an hour with somebody in Tokyo, and we were watching Fabric live. You know, who knows what we were watching, you know, Andy C, whatever, DJ Hype, some big, huge DJ, listening to the newest, freshest dub plates and chatting with a guy in Tokyo. And I was just like, you know, we're the first generation to not be like, well, my grandson knows how to use this phone. It's like, I know how to use my phone. Like, you know, I know how to use technology. And that's one of the things I think is so neat about it, is that like, I don't know, it seemed just to kind of skip the 30s. Yeah. But it's like 40-year-olds and 20-year-olds. And it's like, yeah, you know, we'll have our get off my lawn jokes and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's really like, I respect these dudes. I mean, I first started following Winslow on Instagram because I was like, stateside guy is making good stuff.
Yeah.
And then I was like, God, and he's just young. And then you get to know his personality, and I was like, this guy is awesome. And then, you know, within 6-7 months is like when he starts the trajectory and then gets the hospital thing. And it's like, you know,
yeah, that was amazing to watch, like to actually like be kind of in the inner circle, like rumbling, the conversations, it was
and
super
seeing
cool.
him at Hospitality on the Beach.
Oh my God, right? Yeah, man.
And Alpha Rhythm too, who we've like all communicated with and stuff. Like,
that was one of the highlights of this year for sure. Like he played our track together on stage, and that was just like I was sitting there with my wife just being like, this just I found out because someone recorded it live and posted it on Instagram. and I'm like, that's my song. That's my song. It's like,
wow.
Yeah. I was just like, holy crap. That's crazy.
You can die happy.
There.
Yeah, man. That was it. I was like, check. Like, it was just like one of those big kind of like, where do you go from there? You know?
I do know where you need to go from there. So this is a follow-up question. So you're a producer.
Yeah.
And this is something we read Kevin about a lot too, is, are you going to get a controller? Are you going to learn how to DJ? Because to me,
I have one.
The next level would be to play out at a hospital.
Yeah. They trust me. So like, when I signed, when I did the EP with 170 Plus with Aaron Payne's label, we're local, right? Like, so Beat Mole, Aaron Payne, a whole crew of people. It was a pretty good scene here in Vancouver and out in Whistler. I mean, every 2 weeks he's like, are you ready yet? Are you ready yet? Like, let's go. Like, cause they put on all the shows here. They promote and bring in a lot of the people. They're like one of the main promoters for Western Canada. So I'm like there, like I have some downstairs. My wife arguably is better at it than I am. I mess around with it because there's a lot of people are like, hey, what you want to do guest mix. The thing is it stresses the shit out of me, right? Like every time I get on the table, I'm in my producer mindset where I'm like, well, I could just do this and manipulate that. And I get on there and it's like one little mess up and I feel like it's all unraveling. So I can do
Twitch though, but
yeah. Well, and there's people like Winslow and whatnot, the whole like Clang thing, where it's like,
just call yourself Clang-O-Matics.
Yeah, exactly. Clang-O-Matics. It's like nobody really takes it like nobody's sitting there going like, he was off a little bit on that. Like, I think it's like, are you a selector?
If you go watch DJs live, no, I mean, not everybody is Andy C. Like, and Siren is two guys.
Yes, yeah. Good.
Okay. Yeah. So let's not forget that one guy is selecting while the other guy is mixing.
But let's be honest, like
Respect.
a good DJ, like a career DJ is like level, especially if they got that really good ear and they're pulling stuff out, like,
selection wise, but I'm talking about like you're gonna hear the kicks.
Yeah.
Like if you make a mistake, especially if you make like one, and it's not like a wreck.
Yeah,
people are on who knows what. They at least had a couple of drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody cares. Like it's selection. It's just like vibes over technicals. Same thing. Selection. Rule number one. You'll do fine. And I'll watch. I will.
The idea of like having 300 people in front of you, because like locally, right? They're like, hey, we want you to come down and do a show on Friday. There's people that would come and see you. It's the local community. I mean, honestly, that puts the fear of God in me, like getting up on a stage.
Hey, man.
Now, do you play an instrument? Because like, if you play an instrument, you probably were in a band at some point and had to deal with that performance anxiety.
I was in like a punk band at a young age. We're called the Yummy Blue Bicycles. And, I played the drums a bit growing up and things of that nature. But I think it's not even the crowd per se. It's just, like, sitting in front of some foreign tables you haven't worked on before. Yeah.
Well, that's what it is. You got to get out there. But Kevin, I also want to say that like being a DJ is different. It's just you.
Yeah.
When I'm up there with the band, I feel like my guy.
Well, and I would still get nervous in the band, but you just power through and pretend like you're not.
But that's what I think is, it's like, to me, it's just like the Instagram thing. It's like you started putting your tracks out there. You just got to get on stage. And we've all, except for Kevin, but Kevin has dealt with it with his bass and whatever equipment of like, yeah, man. I mean, I have been to I always brought my own needles.
Yeah.
I've had stuff not working, like you can't monitor properly, and suddenly I'm like mixing in a way that I've never had to mix before,
Yeah.
And it's like one of my favorite DJs is DJ Coco. He's a 45s guy. He's the greatest in the world at spinning 45s. He's amazing, and he makes them duplicate his setup.
Really?
He's so perfect. I mean, stacks of 45s, throwing them down and mixing them perfectly. These little tiny records. Like he has to have his Pioneer mixer. He has to have 1200s, his needles. And it's like, but the average DJ isn't going to get that.
No.
But it's like, again, man, people are so forgiving if you're playing good music. Like, yeah.
I know I have to rip the Band-Aid off eventually. And there's like this third person vision I have of, it being extremely stressful and sweating like 10 buckets but getting off afterwards and just being super addicted, right? Like, oh my God, I can't wait till I do that. I kind of this vision that something like that will happen.
Oh, it will.
So,
anything, I'll procrastinate it,
Zach and I can kind of speak to this. And Zach, I did mention, DADnB duties, I do have to drop here in a minute. I'm already getting summoned, but I do want to add just one thing is that if you get on Twitch, which you are, and you get a camera and you start mixing, that is the best place to work at it, because one, it's motivating, because usually people will tune in, right?
Yeah.
Which is nice, because then you feel like you're not just playing for yourself, which is fine too. But the more you do it, the better you'll get. And I've already invited you on Good Friday sessions. So at some point when you're ready, and don't worry about it, just play tracks. I mean, like,
I know I'll do it. I'll do it.
About it.
I mean, the other half of it is we're, in the city in a super small place. I don't have a studio at all. Like, all the music I've produced from day one, well, and like all my drum and bass has been on these.
I'm interested. Which ones are they?
Everything. These are this
770s.
70 goes.
Fire Dynamics.
Yes. Yeah. I like everything. That's it. And my MacBook Pro. I don't have monitors. I don't have any. I bounce
in
everything.
The car check. I assume you do lots of car checks.
I love hearing that, because people are always like, I need the, I can't get my mix down right because I don't have, $2,000 monitors, or you know what I'm saying? It's like whatever. Eric Echomatics uses a $200 pair of headphones, right? Or whatever, and nails it. So
yeah, I did headphones. I got a MIDI keyboard to, lay down chords. And then the shitty part is I have to like bounce, go to the car, play it in the car.
Yeah.
Car has a good stereo. I'm like,
do you use Dropbox?
I gotta go, guys.
Yeah. You out of here? See you, John.
Yeah, gotta go. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
See ya.
Have a good one. Yeah,
I like when screwed up stuff like this happens in the middle of the show.
It's real.
He has to go with family because
dad drum and bass, and then what do you expect? I got obligations.
The Dropbox, but back to the Dropbox helped me because I was like bouncing it, putting it in iTunes, and then like I now have like 50 of the same one, and it's like at least with Dropbox,
I put it in SoundCloud private, and then I create a playlist on that, and then I'll go for a drive, and then be like, oh man, like that high end's crazy. The monitor, like and then I'll play it on my mono system downstairs. I'll play it on some earbuds, and then I'll just take notes like, bass sounds a bit muddy on this, whatever it is. I'll take a bunch of notes, and then come back, sit down, redo it, and then repeat. So usually I think it takes like 3 or 4 goes at it, like at the end where it's just tweaking, fine tuning everything until I'm kind of like, okay, this is decent enough to go with.
Yeah, I feel like I have to also have my reference tracks too and listen. Like play mine, play that in the car, and then kind of go back and forth. But I'll use that as a segue. Do you really kind of finish writing it and then mix it, or do you find yourself in the mix process going and rewriting things sometimes?
I'll get to your question, but I think I've had to, as a father and everything else going in life, I don't have a lot of time. So a couple years ago, I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I don't have hours every day to just tinker around. I have to get right to it. So, I created a template, and with markers in it, all of my various different stacks, effects, everything preloaded. All of my channels done kind of the way I like to do stuff. It's all blank, obviously, but it allows me to open up a project and I can start putting ideas down immediately. And I'm not sitting there messing around going, where's my reverb? Where's my sidechain compression on this? I can just plug it in and have a baseline good to go. So this goes into answering your question. Because of that, I actually find I can pretty much like get the construct of my idea down, and then start building, the layers around that before I even touch anything when it comes to mastering, because I have the template I've built that kind of gets it to a point where it's the sound I'm looking for. And then from there, it's fine tuning it and adjusting it to kind of, get to that level where I can, check it off and go, okay, this is done and ready to go. So I find a template has been really, really helpful for me.
What is your DAW that you use?
Logic. Yeah. So I've used like pretty much everything over the years, but ended up kind of falling in love with Logic. Oh my God. Like I think in 2012, I had like a MacBook Air that I bought just for around the house, and it came with GarageBand, right? And I was like, oh, what's this GarageBand? You know, I did use Fruity Loops when it first came out, you name it. And I don't know.
Yeah, I know you're old school because I still call it Fruity Loops too.
Yeah.
Because I think I got a cracked version of Fruity Loops 2 or 3 when Kevin gave it to me, and now everybody calls it FL.
Yeah, no, Fruity Loops, and it didn't even know what it was in the beginning. You know,
no, still kind of doesn't.
Yeah, it's just like, what is this? I don't know. You know,
maybe that's why we get along. I don't know what I am.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, man, a template really helps.
So you mix in Logic.
I mix in Logic. I do everything.
You bounce it. Do you like bounce everything to audio, or you just kind of?
I'm trying to be a bit better. I've had to adjust my workflow ever since. So the last 3, well, the 2 EPs that are out plus a third about to come on Celsius, kind of had to, I guess, mature things for me, because like when I got the first EP signed, he's like, great, you have to bounce everything to stems, and they stem master. And I was like, stem what? Like, what do you, yeah. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, I go in my project and, you know, I'm kind of a little sloppy. And I was like, okay, I got to bounce all this MIDI. I got to clean all these, like, I got to get all the automations put in. I got to have everything named appropriately. So ever since then, like a year ago, like I'm a lot better at bouncing everything to audio. And, you know, that way I can move to getting everything bounced to a stem and off to the engineer a lot quicker. Because before it would be like a day's effort for like one song, you know, like,
and the stem is, how many stems is it?
They limit it, you know, so that's the other thing too. So, you know, in his case, I think it's like, I can't remember the exact number. I think it's like 15 to 17 stems in total.
Shit. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite a bit. And most of them are going to be drums and bass, obviously. All of the effects you can kind of bounce into one, the melodic elements, the synths, that sort of stuff you can. Yeah, but like if you listen to a lot of the Focus releases, you can tell there's a lot of focus on the drums and the bass, like just how they engineered them. They're always very crisp and kind of front and center. I would love that. Like cool.
I would like that just to see what it did to my track, because that is where I'm
crazy.
That's where I'm spending.
Well, that was one of my questions was, have you ever not been thrilled? I mean, I know if you're not in this situation, if you're just hiring a mastering engineer, I've been on enough forums to know that they'll usually give you 2 to 3 revisions. Have you ever had to ask for a revision? Yeah.
So sometimes what will happen is the engineer will actually send 3 different versions, right? Drums soft, drums hard, whatever, transients, whatever it is. And then you're sitting there trying to like, you know, like, what's the difference between these, right? Yeah. My first EP, there was a song where, unfortunately, I was just so happy to like be on Celsius, to talk to Marco, to have this engineer. I was like, I don't want to, who am I to say anything?
Right.
And I didn't push back. And it really kind of like later on, I was just like, what was I doing? Like I should have like, you know, said something. Now on the last 2, 100%. And it's not like nobody didn't expect me to. It was like in my own mind, I thought I shouldn't, you know, but the reality is the engineers wants you to, because what you'll do is you'll bounce all your individual elements, but then you'll bounce you'll bounce your drums as a whole, how you hear it, and then your musical elements and everything else. And then you'll do your own personal best master. So the engineer, when he's coming into each section, hears your reference. So that when he or she is doing their work on it, they're not doing it completely like oblivious to the sound that you're trying to gather. But yeah, so future ones, I have gone back where it's like, you know, I need the effects a bit higher here, or this a bit lower there, because it's amazing how something can change the entire vibe of a song.
And that's so far, you know, I have these basically like 2 releases that I did, and I just sent off to Newtone just, you know, a mix down, and then he mastered 1 file, and then I sent those 2 off, and then for this other thing, it was rushed out to get a part of this benefit album, so I mastered it myself. so that's something that I'm looking forward to is, and another reason why I want to collaborate more is to like, I feel like I write pretty good drums, and most of the time I get to my first version of something, maybe it's just a first drop, or maybe I've just kind of copied and pasted the second drop, and I listen to the song and I'm like, oh yeah, this sounds good. And then as I start to mix it and finish it, not all the time, but a lot of times it kind of starts to lose something. And then I'm like kind of treading water and going back, because it's like if I start mixing it and then I go back and start rewriting stuff, everything really becomes discombobulated, because I am very organized. Like I have a template. I mean, Kevin and I both edit TV shows, and I was not the most organized person until I started doing it. And it's just like, you cannot like, I look at other people, I go into other editors' bay, and I just want to freak out when I look at how they work sometimes. But like,
yeah, it has to be organized.
It's got to be, because I don't want to mess around. I don't have time.
And it's collaborative. You're passing projects back and forth, so it has to be organized.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, as you know, apparently, no, it doesn't, because we get it from the person who is not organized, and then on what I spend an hour organizing it just so I can work. And so I knew when I started really producing again that for me that was going to be really important. And I started trying to work on Ableton because I thought that was newer, and if I was going to collab, and Kevin works a little better in Ableton, maybe I would, but it was hard for me. I went back to Fruity Loops and just like immediately started going faster, and like I could get my flow in. So then it was a matter of, okay, now how do I take my editing knowledge and organizational knowledge and put that into this? And I did. But back to the subject is just that, like, that's one thing I look forward to, is a little bit more of a hands-on mastering process just for me to learn, because I'm still learning, like, how does it sound when I have a mix down and then I send it to the mastering? Because like now when I'm kind of self-mastering, because I'm not going to, for me, I'm not going to send a demo out that's like not limited, you know, like,
of course. Yeah,
it's going to have a little mastering chain on it and be nice and loud. I'm going to send out a demo.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So and that helps me learn, like, okay, my drums start to sound harsh. That's like something that has happened consistently enough for me to know, okay, now I need to make sure in my mix that the drums sound good, but they're dipped a little bit at 3K or whatever, you know, they're rolled off on the top, so that once I get it and start pushing the volume of it, it doesn't start to sound harsh. But it's a journey for me, and I feel like, your music sounds very clean. And so that's why I do want to ask you, like, how the mix down goes for you. And I was going to ask about your headphones and what your mixing situation was.
Yeah.
Yeah. To answer your question, getting your first stem master back was just like, oh my God, like, you think you're doing an okay job, and then you hear you're saying, because you made the song, it. Right. And then when you hear it, someone's done with it. And you're just like, what the hell? Like, this is crazy. Now, the cool thing is now you get your own reference of yourself at how good it can be, your drums, everything. So like, I remember Marco on my second EP with him, he just sent me an email. He's like, Eric, these drums are your reference moving forward. Right. Like, this is it. And I have like this reference of my drums bounced out, mastered by this engineer. And that's great. I can go back to that at any point in time and kind of listen and be like, okay, I'm a little off here, I'm a little off there.
Are you giving him, I assume, like a lot of people, you probably group your drums, maybe, know, and so like it does. I went down this rabbit hole a couple months ago, bouncing out stems and realizing that, using groups does make it more complicated. So, say you have some compression on your snare, and then you're sending that to your drum group, which has another compressor on it. And your kick is also going into that drum group. And so they're both being affected by this, bus compressor. So are you soloing? And I assume you're giving him a kick as a separate stem and a snare as a separate stem, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So then are you just
grouped? I have those grouped independently. So I'll have my my kicks and my snare, my tops, like hi-hats, anything rhythm, like, you know, your shuffle in a group, and then I'll have my breaks in another group.
So you don't actually your breaks. Okay. So maybe that makes your life a little easier than what I'm imagining, because I will have like a snare group and a kick group, but then those go to a drum group as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that how you're doing it?
No, I used to do that, but then I just found myself having perhaps the issues you're talking about. So I just streamlined that a little bit. Like, honestly, in the last year, I think one of the biggest things I've done from previous years is I used to have this like mentality, and perhaps it was just came from nowhere. I think it came maybe from like seeing people post their projects on Instagram. And they're like these gigantic, like colorful entities, just stacks of stuff. And then I would just be like, oh, maybe that's why my music isn't good. Maybe I need to do more. Maybe I need to have more of everything. I have to have 18 basses and 1,600 different drum samples. And I kind of went down this path where I just like, I think overcomplicated everything. And then I realized like less is more. Like some of my best, my personal opinion, some of the best tracks I have are really simple. Like when you look at them, they're not overly complicated. There isn't a lot of things competing for various different areas in the EQ and the spectrum. Everything kind of just sits really nicely. And I've been kind of continuing down that path, like on my drums too, keeping it very clean, and trying to simplify and not always thinking that more is better, you know?
For sure. I mean, I think that's something I certainly am. I've told Zach and Johnny, like my next several tracks, because my first few tracks were way overcomplicated. And I'm like, I'm going as minimal as possible, you know, and then see if, you know, make that work. And then I'm going to slowly, maybe if I want to get more complicated, but I agree. Because if you can't make a simple song work, you're certainly not going to make a complicated song work.
Yeah. And another good exercise is like start as you build out your track to a certain point, start taking things away, actually, right? Listen to it and be like, I'm going to pull that out. And you know, what happened? You know, did it ruin your track? Did it make it better? Was it actually adding anything of any value?
I honestly think these feedback streams are part of the reason we tend to overcomplicate our stuff too. You know, is that people are looking for, oh, now it's the third 16 bars, so you should have a change up. You know, there's all these kind of rules. Are people looking for things to comment on, you know, and they're listening so critically, you know, they're not necessarily listening like the average listener.
It's so true, man. I'm guilty. Like I kind of got to a certain point, and I don't mean this from like an ego point of view, because I know I have so much to learn and I'm like really just at the cusp of anything here. But I kind of got to a point where I was like, enough feedback. I need to go and do and not sit there and, oh, what was that? Oh, the residents on 3, you know, like I just you know, like I had to just kind of put that aside for a little bit, and actually just go and do and not worry so much. And now feedback for me is a little bit different. Like I'll shoot something to Alpha, or I'll shoot, you know, like I'll send it to some different artists and I'll be like, what do you think? Like, what's going on here? Is it jiving? Or I'll selectively ask for feedback in an area I'm not confident in, as opposed to a blanket feedback session where it's like, hit me from it. No, I'm okay, but something's off with my bass, right? Like, I don't know. I'm not like, I'm close, but what is it? And then it's just more helpful, right? I'll send feedback.
Totally.
I can apply it and go from there. So it's not to say feedback is bad. No, it's just, I kind of at one point was like, okay, I just need to go do this and not worry about so many little.
Well, and for me, I think I got frustrated with the lack of practical feedback of like, especially when I'm trying to learn and I don't, you know, telling me that this or that is wrong. Great. And what do I do? Like, I think most of the time I know what's wrong. Like, I know, like, my highs are too harsh. Like, it's funny, you know, on Think, I sent a couple tracks in, and it was like a tough moment. Luckily, I have this whole TV background of getting horrible notes on something I've worked really hard on. You know,
eviscerated.
I'm like, I've gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, I have a muscle for that, but like, they were like, "Oh, I feel like we told you this last time. Maybe maybe you have bad hearing." And I was like, "Well, you can stick that somewhere." But yeah, first of all, I know I got bad hearing.
Yeah.
But they were actually wrong. What it was they said my mids were like too muddy, and then the next time they were scooped or something like that because I had like swung back and forth. But then this Solistier guy, a couple of feedback sessions ago, he was like, this is happening, and I think what you're doing is this. Try this. And he did
yeah.
3 different
And you're just like, what was that? Slow down.
Dude, I was like, this is what I want. Like,
Yeah.
So yeah, big shout outs to Solistier. But even with Winslow, and I mean, I take some of the blame, and this was over a year, really like a year ago. Some of our one-on-one sessions, I didn't, it was just like a lot of chit chat when it's like Zoom is great. Like all the stuff we talked before, about the community and what the pandemic did for this. But what's hard for me is the hands-on part. Like I wasn't good at school, I got a whole career in editing by sitting with editors in their bays
And just watching
and learning and
Yeah.
asking and giving and being like, no, do this, no, do that. And like, do this to it. Like, and that's what I'm missing is like, I feel like I need somebody to just watch me work and be like, you are over compressing, like you are adding too much of this here. And, I mean, or maybe not, maybe I just need more time,
Did you do any mentorship stuff or one-on-one,
No, I didn't. And I mean, I've had some great introductions with some amazing people. And I guess kind of like through collaborating, I learned a lot too, just like how people work. Like working with Alpha's just amazing, right? Like just does so much for the community, so humble. Like when he reached out, it was like, hey, do you want to collab? I was just like, what? Like me? I'm like, what are you talking about? Right. And then we Ganymede, we banged out like literally in a week. It was the craziest thing. Like he sent me something. I worked on the bass. I shot it back to him. He was like, and I've worked with him on a couple other projects. We have another one like completed right now that's picked up. And I foresee myself working with him as long as he wants to a ton. Like the two of us are just like two peas in a pod, man. Like it's just this. And I've had.
Is there anything specific you remember that you learned that you picked up that you want to discuss?
Volumes, believe it or not, right? Like in my mind, I'm like, oh, this has to be like really loud here and like has to hit hard. And then I would send it to him and he would change the structure around and the volumes of things and then send it back. And then I would hear something I never heard before. And it just kind of reminded me to chill a little bit and not have to come in like full frontal all the time with everything, like, and not be afraid to play. It sounds really basic, but not be afraid to play with the volume, right? Because sometimes I'm like, this synth or this thing is the main element. Everything needs to ride on it. And he hears something totally different. He's like, no, you should actually bring that down 30 points, bring this up 20. And it actually changes the entire song. But then you're like, oh no, like that's way more balanced and easier on the ears. And working with somebody, I think, is just eye-opening and just picking up on their strengths and vice versa. Like Alpha's like, your strengths are these. I love what you do here. Can you add that to my track? And then now
what are your strengths? That was one of my questions.
He likes my bass. He likes, he's like, look, I'll just put out a roller 24/7, a rolling bass line, like your typical kind of liquid roller. And I'm more like love playing with 808s and just doing unconventional bass lines. And, if you look at Ganymede, you listen to that, like it's not a conventional kind of rolling, typical liquid bass line. There's a lot built around it. That's something I enjoy. And he fully embraced it. And the future tracks we're working on, the track that's signed now and coming out at God knows when, we actually took both of ours and combined them. It was just an idea. We're like, hey, why don't we take kind of yours, mine, we'll figure out how they work well together. And it just clicked. Like, it was just like, oh my God, this is fantastic. So
you mean your bass lines?
Yeah, like both of ours, and just figured out how they can like basically create a hybrid between the two of them.
If you're not using an 808, do you have a go-to bass synth that you like? Are you a Serum guy?
Yeah, Serum's kind of my go-to.
Vital.
No, I don't use Vital. I think Serium's like pretty much the majority. DC Breaks about a year ago or so put out like a really cool sample based synth. If you go to DC Breaks, I think it's called Halo.
Yeah,
man, crazy. And you can put your own samples in there too, so you can source your own stuff, put it in there, and just go to town with it. So I use that a lot, kind of for my mid basses. Like that was a big thing for me, was like the aha moment of like my bass can be broken up into multiple different sections. It's not just the bass, you know, like I have my sub isolated and controlled for mud. I have my mids and my highs, and then all of the automation to kind of bring things in and out at various times to kind of have that feeling of constant movement and change up. Like, you know, sounds basic, but honestly, like I didn't figure that out until January. You know? So you're gonna hear it now on every track moving forward. You know? Like,
well, and it's something Kevin and I have talked about. Like,
yeah, we go back and forth on that.
I pretty much. I mean, I'm 100%, and for a long time, where everything where I separate them, I'll have 2 or 3 layers. But then I've gotten, you know, feedback about them not gluing together well enough, and
yes, that is true.
Like I have,
and really, I'm the opposite.
That's one of the things I feel like I've really improved on lately.
Yeah,
I've been trying to just make it work, just to keep my project simpler. For a while, I've just been trying to make it work, mostly with one, you know, really big sound, and then just looking at span and comparing it to reference tracks and just making sure there's enough sub. But you can, we all know that's like, there are no rules essentially, as long as it sounds good.
I think it was more an understanding of how much more creative I could be, exploring ways of like trying to emulate it as much as I can. And
yeah. And I mean, there's also ways to do it within. If you use something like Phase Plant, you can do it all within the synth, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a good point.
If you're Phase Plant's insane like that, but
yeah.
I don't really fully understand it.
Does anybody?
How are you doing on time? I mean, I know we talked about 5:30, so I just want to check in.
Yeah, I can go for a few more.
I definitely want to hear this. You've been so productive as a dad, and even if you're not a dad, just as a musician, this is something we all struggle with, is finding time to do the music when you have a full-time job. Do you have a set schedule, you know, with your wife, where you're working from 10 to midnight every night? How do you stay so productive with a full-time job and 2 kids? What's your schedule?
Man, I don't know. Like I can't do evenings during the week. I just have such a demanding job, and I sit in front of a computer all day. And if I try to do music like during the week at night, like I get migraines.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't work. I'll play with ideas throughout the week. Like I'm very much like I'll hum a tune out, or there's like something in my mind, and I'll try to actually articulate it. It sounds weird, but I'll try to like kind of write out kind of what it is I'm thinking. Doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes that works out. Usually for me, it's going to be Saturday morning. So morning routine, breakfast, go get groceries, and then I'll have a 2-hour period Saturday from usually 10 to 12. And then to my earlier comment of not having enough time, as we all know, like I'm very like strict with that. And I'll sit down and I'll try to either finish something I'm working on. Obviously, if it's something new, if I got everything finished and out and not have to worry about it anymore, I'll try to create something new. But if it doesn't happen, I won't force it, and then I'll move into like sound design. So instead, I'll just sit there and I'll play around with the synth, and I'll try to, you know, make a certain sound or bounce something out, put it in my library. So at least I have something from that session. And then Sunday, same thing. Sunday, I try to carve out another 1.5 to 2 hours between kind of 10 and 12. And honestly, like all of my work is done within those 4 hours. And yeah, I just try to be really like use that time as best as possible. There's moments where I feel even guilty using that time, right? Because I'm like, I should be like playing basketball or like, you know, doing these other things with my kids. But then I realize they come in here and they see me making music. They get to hear it. They're kind of part of it too. And I just hope that much like my parents and my grandmother making music in their way, that, they learn from this. They get some inspiration from this.
Yeah. So I got to go to more dad duties, but it's been super great to meet you, and thanks for your time and some really good insights that we've got from you, and just appreciate it. And I will definitely be in touch.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah. Great to finally meet you. And, thanks for listening to me blab.
It's been great.
Good. All right, buddy. Appreciate it. Thanks.